forth your heart and love is what you came for.
All right, so welcome and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. It's also the official kickoff to my YouTube channel. So, hey, podcast land and YouTube land. I am your host, jasmineclbaker, and today we are going to be talking about a topic that is really close to me. I mean, anything talking about life and grief and relationships and like that is close to me. But this particular one, I have definitely experienced, and it took me a while to really understand what it was in its full capacity. So I wanted to do this episode to kind of help you all, first of all, recognize it and then kind of navigate through it. So today's episode is Grieving Seasons. And we're going to be talking about actual real life seasons like fall, winter, spring, those seasons, and then seasons in our life, and how it's really important for us to grieve seasons just like we grieve people and we grieve anything else. We need to grieve seasons. Here's why. So, when we talk about grieving seasons, changing seasons really has the ability to affect your mental health. There is a such thing called seasonal affective disorder, or known as SAD. Let me pause here and say I'm not a licensed therapist. So any information I'm giving is for educational purposes only. It's not a contract. It's not anything legally binding. I'm just giving informational, educational tips and things like that. So SAD, seasonal affective disorder, affects people when we shift from warmer months to colder months. Reason being is because it's getting dark faster. We're losing light quicker. It's getting colder. It's staying cloudy and dreary longer. For those of us who live or are from up north, it's dark for a long time, and that really has the ability to affect your mental state, especially if you're not really aware of it. It can cause you to try to want to hibernate more, not go out as much. You're not seeing people as much. Just it being dark really can affect your mood. Or even say if it's sunny, but it's still cold. If you're like me, I struggle with anemia, and so I'm naturally cold anyway. So when it gets to winter, I kind of switch to miserably cold. And so I really don't like doing anything outside. But being inside for all of these months that it's cold can also do some damage to your mental health. So we're talking about weather seasons changing and also seasons of your life changing. So when I say that, I mean, for example, if you move, right? Moving can be very exciting. You're starting something new. You have new opportunities coming. You're able to meet new people. There's an excitement that comes with moving and getting all these new opportunities and a fresh start and things like that. However, at the same time of being excited about moving, you also go through this. You also can go through a period of missing your old season, especially if you were thriving in that last season and the move isn't because you were struggling, but it was just for better opportunities. You could genuinely miss your old city, your old state, your old house, your old job, your old friends. Like there's a lot that comes with moving and entering a new season of your life. The new season could be going from singleness to marriage. Marriage is a beautiful thing. I'm not married yet, but marriage is a beautiful thing. But from having conversations with different married people in my life, there is a adjustment that comes along with moving from being single and only being responsible for yourself and not having to check in, things like that, to shifting to being married. And I hear that there are aspects of your singleness that you miss being married. And sometimes you might feel like you're not able to grieve the single advantages being married because maybe feels like you're downing your marriage and things like that. And that's really not the case. It's just you are shifting in your life, and there's, something that you need to grieve, because let's be real. Grief is a response to loss or a response to change. So anytime something changes in your life, especially if it's a significant change, there's cause for you to grieve. So it doesn't have to be something bad happening. It could be genuinely something good, like a new move or a marriage. It's great. Those are great things happening in your life, but you're also allowed to grieve what you left or what you shifted or transitioned out of. So this episode is really just encouraging you all to understand and know that you do need to grieve seasons like you grieve people. So, I say, this is something that I have experienced. It is. If you know me for any amount of time, you know that I have kind of moved around a lot. And some people have not really understood me moving around as much as I do. And I used to try to feel like I had to explain it, but then I realized that that's just my life. It's something that, God has called me to, and I've accepted it. And when people kind of question it, it's a natural response for people to question, but I've learned not to take it personally. But in the moves that I've had to go through, most of them I looked forward to. Like when I left the state of Michigan and moved to Georgia, I was so excited about that move because I had been wanting to leave Michigan for a long time. I had been there for 10 years. I moved there when I was 18. I spent all of my 20s there. And so I felt like, I had reached my capacity, had gotten what I needed to get, and I was ready to go. But for any of us who are believers, we know we don't just get up and go because we want to. We actually, pray, seek God, make sure we're going somewhere that he has for us to go, because we don't want to be somewhere that he doesn't have for us, because that opens you up to a lot of, potentially harmful situations. So I remember wanting to leave Michigan even before I was done with my degree at Michigan State. Of course, I wasn't going to leave, but I was preparing for next. Like, I was looking for grad schools in different states. Like, I didn't look for anything within the state of Michigan because I was so determined and set on leaving. So when I finally did move, and when God finally did give me the okay and release me to go and sent me to Atlanta, Georgia, I was really excited because one, it's in the South. I love food, so I was really excited about the food, but also because I was able to get into warmer weather. So getting into that whole how I deal with natural weather seasons changing, I was excited to be in a climate that wasn't going to have as harsh of a winter, and seeing how that was going to affect me with, me being cold typically all the time. So things like that. So I was really excited. So I got to Atlanta, and just the circumstance of me being in Atlanta was it was a story, y'all. So I was in Michigan. I was living in Kalamazoo, Michigan at the time. I was working at the juvenile home, and I was staying with a family at the time. In the midst of that, I had connected with somebody who was helping me in business, kind of giving me the ropes, showing me different things. And they asked me to come to Atlanta to help with a vending opportunity. And so I was like, of course, no problem. I'm helping you and you're showing me how to further in my business. So of course. So I got on a plane, flew down to Atlanta, helped with that business, and came back. But while I was down there, after the event was over, I spent a couple extra days down there to be with family, because I have family in Atlanta, and I went to go visit a church. That church that I had visited, I had been seeing it throughout the year when they were going through their launch and things like that. And I was like, man, that would be dope to be a part of that. But, I was in Michigan at the time. So it's like you kind of think of things, but you don't kind of really settle on them because you're, in your mind, it's like it's not a possibility. So it's kind of like, okay, cool, it'll be great, but not really like I'm thinking, I'm not really harping on it until I went to go visit. I went to go visit, and y'all, I was like, I wasn't even there that long because I overslept because I was so exhausted from working that event. So I got there late. But even as soon as I got there late, like the part that I got touched me so much. I think I cried. Like, I was just like, man, I really felt something there. And I was like, it would be great if I could be a part of this ministry. But again, I was in Michigan. So I get back home, I'm reflecting on the trip, thinking it was great, things like that. Kind of left it alone. I'm thinking I'm leaving it alone. but I got on a phone call with the woman that I was working with her business, and she was like, I think I was kind of telling her how much I enjoyed Atlanta and things like that. And I think she said something like, well, why don't you move? And I was like, well, I can't just move. And she was like, well, why can't you? And it was at that point during that conversation when I really felt Holy Spirit saying, yes, move. And I'm kind of just saying all the reasons why I can't move. At the time, I didn't have a car. I was just starting to build up some financial independence, kind of settle and establish in some things. And logically, to me, it didn't make sense. And so I was like, no. Once I kind of really settled on, okay, this Atlanta thing could happen, again, it didn't make logical sense for me to get up and go right then. So I started making plans. I called my aunt because I told you I had family down there. I said, hey, I'm thinking about moving down there, but I'm thinking, this was in September. So I'm like, holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas is coming up. So I'm thinking about coming first of the year. And so she was like, okay, that's great. First of the year sounds great. So I'm starting to make plans for, first of the year. But then Holy Spirit is saying, no, you need to go next month. This was September. He was saying you need to go in October. Mind you, we are in September. So I think I had 2 weeks at this point. No, this is the end of August. So September was coming. So he was like, next month, you need to be in Atlanta. Again, y'all, I didn't have a car. I didn't know where I was going to be staying. I hadn't found a job in Atlanta. Like, logically, when I tell y'all this didn't make sense, it just didn't make sense. Long story short, though, I ended up doing what he said. Like, I lost my job at the juvenile home over something really technical that really shouldn't have mattered, to where when it happened, he was like, are you going to listen to me now? And so I was like, okay. So we're going to Atlanta. I also, my living situation had kind of transitioned to where I couldn't be where I was, so I had to find somewhere else to go. And so everything just lined up to where the Holy Spirit was like, okay, are you going to go now? So I had a lot of stuff at the time too. So I'm like, well, how am I going to get all my stuff down there? Because I was like, I'm going to buy, I think I had bought a plane ticket, or I was about to buy a plane ticket, one of the two. And so I was like, I can only take so much stuff on a plane. Where am I going to keep my stuff? I'm going to get a storage unit, all this type of stuff. So I called a friend of mine from a previous church, and I was like, hey, I'm moving to Atlanta. And he was like, well, when are you going? And I told him, and he was like, wow, I'm going to Atlanta that same weekend. He was like, how are you getting there? And I said, well, I was just going to fly and then kind of come back and get the rest of my stuff. He was like, well, let me check to see if I can change my plane ticket, and then I can drive you down so you can get most of your stuff. Y'all, I'm like, this is just stuff that the Lord is just lining up. And so come to find out, he was able to change his ticket. So he picked me up. We packed his car with as much stuff as I could get, and he literally drove me down to Atlanta. And I was able to stay with family. And so the whole time I was in Atlanta, I was there for about 2.5 years. There was so much that I got where I needed to bring that I got while I was there. So one thing that I want y'all to understand, that there is clarity in seasons changing. There are things that you learn, things that you gain when seasons change, be it from a move or whatever, what have you. So in this move, I learned so much about myself and who I am as a person, and I grew so much naturally and spiritually. And so in my mind, Atlanta was where I was going to plant. Like, that was home. I was going to be there. I had started working on my credit because I wanted to buy a house. Like, I was like, Atlanta was it for me. I wasn't going to move anymore, is what I thought. But we get to year 2.5, and it's getting to the point of where my sister is about to get married. And so her now husband is communicating with me, and we're planning the proposal. So I drew, well, first of all, I hadn't seen my family for a while. So in 2019, I surprised my sister and my brother, my family, and I drove up from Atlanta to South Bend to see them. That was one time in March. I think she started dating her now husband in like June or something like that. So by the time they were getting ready to get married, he was like, hey, I'm about to propose. So we started planning that. Of course, I had to be there for that. So I drove up to Indiana again. This is the second time in 2 years. The second time in I don't know how many years that I'm now driving home. So after the proposal, then it's time to plan the wedding. And because all of this is happening within a couple months. So, of course, I was made an honor. So she was like, well, can you come up early to, help plan, different events? So I'm like, okay. at the time I was working for myself. I was doing some contracting work, stuff that I could do anywhere. So I'm like, well, I don't really have a reason not to come up early. I didn't have anything tying me necessarily to a set 9 to 5 schedule. So I was like, sure. So this is the third time now I'm driving up to Indiana. And while I'm there, my dad is like, hey, why don't you just move back home? And I'm like, absolutely not. I am loving my life in Atlanta. I felt like it was validation for me. I had gotten to a point of where I had been seeking to get for so long. Financially, I was really about to get on my own. Again, I was staying with somebody, but I was finally to the place where I was looking for somewhere. I knew what I wanted. I felt secure. Like I felt like I was able to really take care of myself. And I wanted to be able to get to the place of fully being on my own while I was in Atlanta. And so I was not considering moving back to Indiana at all. I kept telling them, no, absolutely not. Because while I was there, my dad was like, well, can you come help us do this and the third? Because my experiences with childcare, so whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. I can help y'all while I'm here, but I am leaving. I am not staying. Please don't get used to me being here. Like I kept telling them, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home. Mind you, throughout this, I never asked Holy Spirit if I was supposed to come back home because in me and my flesh, I already knew the answer. So why do I need to ask? Y'all, at some point, he whispered ever so gently, you're going to move back. And I said, I'm about to do what? And so this is where grief comes into seasons changing. I had experienced the joy of seasons changing. I had not experienced the grief of seasons changing. So at the moment where he was like, yeah, you're going to move home, that grief hit me hard. Not because I didn't want to be with my family. And like I told y'all all this, I tell y'all all the time, grief can bring about simultaneous coexisting emotions. So I was excited about being back home with family because I hadn't lived at home since I was 18. But I was grieving the fact that I was leaving Atlanta and I didn't want to leave Atlanta. So even before I really knew what was going on, I just knew I had a lot of disequilibrium going on in my emotions and things like that. So at this point, I'm already up here because I'm doing, my sister's wedding, stuff like that. And then my brother proposed to his now wife. So all of this is happening while I'm up here. So, and I'm working at the time too. I'm working up in Indiana. So I flew back home or flew back to Atlanta to kind of close up things. I had my storage unit. I had some stuff I had to close down, things like that. And I got all my stuff, drove back up to Indiana, and now I'm here in Indiana. And now I'm like, okay, this thing is like for real. I have all of my stuff now in Indiana. And like I said, being around my family was amazing, but Indiana is not Atlanta. So, I'm adjusting to, we're getting into winter and snow is coming. The cold weather is coming. So all the things that I was excited to get away from, I'm now having to adjust to being back in. And mentally, I was not prepared for what that was going to look like. So I'm going through all of this, not really knowing it was grief yet. Because that's like I said, I had experienced positive change, but hadn't experienced the hardness of changing seasons. So I moved back officially in November of 2020, and it took me till June of 2021 to realize that I was grieving being back home in Indiana. And the reason why what really clicked for me that made me understand what was happening is my car. I don't keep my car like squeaky, spotless clean, but I realized that I hadn't unpacked fully. Like I still had my stuff in my car. And it was everywhere to the point of where people needed rides. Like it was embarrassing because like we had to push stuff to the side for people to get in. Like they would sit on top of each other. And all of this was me holding on to the fact of if I finally unpack this car, it's the final nail in the coffin that I no longer live in Atlanta and I'm back in Indiana. Obviously the reality was there because I was physically here, but in my mind, I was able to hold on to the possibility of going back to Atlanta if I could leave my stuff in my car. So it took me till June. I had made it through the winter season. It was warm again. And one day I was like, Jazz, you got to get it together. You have to process this grief. You have to allow yourself to fully be here because one thing that I didn't want to do, and this is another part of clarity that grieving brings you when seasons change, this revelation that I got, that if you're so focused on the past season of being in Atlanta and all that you got there and the greatness and the growth that you experienced, if you focus on that and that you're missing it, I wasn't able to fully embrace and accept and be open to what Indiana was trying to show me and teach me, and what I had to learn and what I had to give, right, being in Indiana. So it wasn't that I was necessarily forgetting Atlanta, but I was lessening my grip on it so that I could be open to receiving everything that Indiana had for me, because there was a reason why the Lord sent me back, and I was missing it because I was so sad about not being in Atlanta anymore, but I was not admitting that I was sad. So I couldn't process it. I couldn't allow God to help me through it because I refused to admit it, because as soon as I admitted it, the reality of the fact that I wasn't there was going to seep in. So I had to grieve it so that I could get clarity of where I was in Atlanta and what I was getting from being in Indiana. Then I had to learn that once I started grieving, it reaffirmed who I am and what I learned in Atlanta. So Atlanta was like where I grew up. I grew into who I am. I became comfortable with who I am, on the outside and the inside. There was just a lot of things that I suppressed about my personality and who I am for fear of other people's opinions. And so I kind of broke out of that shell in Atlanta. And it was kind of like Atlanta was the teaching, right? Like I was in class in Atlanta, and then I got to Indiana. It was like, okay, well now here's the test. What all did you really learn about who you are? Are you going to kind of revert back into who you were? Or are you kind of gonna embrace and introduce people to who you are now? Because I didn't recognize it at first, I definitely reverted back into who I was when I was 18 and I lived at home. And it took me several months until I finally realized the beauty of where I was, that I was finally able to say, hey, this is who I am now as a 32-year-old woman versus an 18-year-old teenager. And so it reaffirmed my identity, knowing that I didn't need the security and the safety of Atlanta to be who I am, because that's just who I am. But had I not taken the time to grieve that, I would have missed it, right? So Atlanta didn't define me. Atlanta didn't make me. It just brought out who I am. And so I realized that I could still be that person outside of Atlanta, which was really dope. This could also apply if your season changing is a new job. Again, if it's a positive move, it could be, you're excited for the new opportunity, but you can also still miss your old coworkers or the work that you did, or maybe the location, maybe the commute was better, different things like that. But when you transition to your new job, you definitely need to grieve the fact of your routine is changing. You're having to learn things all over again. You're the new kid on the block again, things like that. But you're able to really see that all the things that you were doing at the other job, you're reaffirming and being more confident to know that you are bringing what you have and who you are to a new situation and to a new job. And you're like, man, this is really who I am. It's like a validation all over again when you can showcase who you are in a new position the way you did at an old one, and really know that I know my stuff. Like, I am an expert in this area. I'm here for a reason. They hired me for whatever. And so it's just reaffirming your identity, who you are, what you have to value, and knowing that your identity is not tied to a one particular position. You just are who you are, period, right? So that's another thing that it does. And then, with those of us who are believers, we know that there's a time for everything. There's a time to mourn, there's time to celebrate, there's time to be happy, all these different things. And so we have to know that change is a part of life. It's inevitable. If we don't take out the time to really embrace it, and sorry if I can hear the train in the background, but if we don't take the time to embrace it, we're going to miss all the beauty that comes with seasons changing. We need winter to prepare for spring. If we didn't, we wouldn't have winter. It's like if y'all ever saw the movie, shoot, I can see it. It's a kid's movie, although my emotions were all over the place. Oh, Inside Out. If y'all have seen Inside Out, happiness tried to like make sadness just kind of sit and not do anything. And it took her to the end of the movie to realize that sadness has its place, right? Seasons changing. Winter has its place. Spring has its place. Fall has its place. Summer has its place. You being in one area of your life has its place. You being in another area has its place. Everything matters. And if we try to avoid certain seasons, if we try to rush through certain seasons, if we try to stay in certain seasons too long, we're really stifling and hindering our growth. We're hindering our journeys. We're hindering who we ultimately can become and be and grow into for the sake of trying to stay in our comfort zone. Change forces us to operate outside of our comfort zone, but there's so much beauty when we do that and when we embrace it. And so my takeaway from this episode is really to understand that we need to grieve seasons like we grieve anything else. It's really important. It's really crucial. And you owe it to yourself because you want to fully embrace who you are, what you're learning, what each season has to offer you, what you can contribute, what you can give in each season, while also learning how to be in that season, be it good or bad, while dealing with all your emotions that come with it. Understanding that, like I said, two emotions can coexist in one particular season. It could be multiple emotions can coexist in any one particular season. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that you're human and you're learning how to be in that particular season while remembering old seasons, while being anxious maybe for the next season, while really trying to figure out who you are in the midst of that new season. So, y'all, when seasons change, don't fight it. Embrace it because it's so important and necessary for your next and for your now and for what you can contribute in your purpose and your destiny. So that's all I have for you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you are on the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, share it. I would love for you to leave a 5-star review on any of the platforms, all of the platforms. If you're on YouTube, also like, subscribe, and share, and leave a review. Leave your comments. When you see all of my links posted in the show notes, definitely connect with me. I would love to answer any questions you have. Maybe if you want to work with me, anything like that. All of my links are in my show notes. And yeah, thank y'all so much for listening, and I'll see y'all on the next episode.